You're listening to the Fooled by the Root podcast.
I'm so glad you're here. This is your host, Heidi Marble. I'm really thrilled for you to listen to this episode with Matt Otto. He is an adopted person and a sound designer. His talent is off the charts. We are also joined by our own Pulled by the Root sound designer, singer-songwriter, musician, Sean Farley. This conversation goes deeply into Matt's story, also the power of creativity in music. There is a moment where Matt talks about being on a stage that you probably should sit down for. Enjoy this episode. Matt Otto is a sound designer, a composer, a photographer, and an adoptee based in New York City. He received his MFA from Yale School of Drama and his BFA from Boston University. So we talked in our intro call, but if you could just start from the beginning and fill people in on your story.
Yeah, of course. So my story starts with a trigger warning of sexual assault. My birth mother was apparently assaulted while dating in 1983. She became pregnant and then did a study abroad kind of thing in high school in Germany. And that's when she discovered she was pregnant. And so she couldn't speak the language. And then so when she came back to the States, she was visibly pregnant and I guess couldn't seek an abortion at that point. And so put me up for adoption. And I was one of her family members worked at the Food and Drug Administration with my adoptive aunt. And my adoptive aunt knew that my adoptive parents were looking for children. They've tried to conceive for 10 years, couldn't do it. And they thought this was perfect, a boy. And so they arranged it privately. I have a lot of the documents of like the lawyers and stuff. It seemed like it was very quick, very like just solved. Like the lawyer sent documents. My birth grandmother or my bio mom signed them, and then it was done. My adoptive family is in New Jersey. Then I was supposed to be born December 24th. I wasn't. I was late. I was born December 31st. So my parents were down December 24th, waiting, excited. They went back to New Jersey. And then as soon as they got home the next morning, they got a call being like, come and pick up your son. And so they drove back down to Maryland. And they couldn't do the exchange in the hospital. This is something that my adoptive parents just told me recently. They couldn't do the exchange in the hospital, so they went to the church across the street. And my bio grandmother handed me off to my adoptive parents. And then that was it. It was all done. My adoptive parents have always told me I'm adopted. They have this great document, kind of like a photo album of my parents and me, and they would just tell me about that story. Obviously, they didn't include my conception at all. They were just like, and you were really needed and loved. And my bio mom couldn't care for you, so we did. And, the normal kind of adoption story. And they would also send pictures to my bio grandmother and my bio mom, up until the point where my bio grandmother was moving house, was leaving a condo, and they sent this letter, and they were like, thank you for the letters. Or the pictures all these years. This is when I was about 12. And they're like, I'm moving, and so I won't be able to receive them at this address anymore. I was like, okay, got it. Noted. And it was like, stop. When I reconnected with my bio family a year ago during lockdown, my bio aunt told my bio cousin, she was like, they just stopped sending it. They just stopped sending pictures. And I was like, that's weird. Apparently there's some like history of dementia in my bio family. My pet theory, which I've never met my bio grandmother before she passed, but like I think she had early dementia and those things and just forgot that she sent that letter, or forgot that she didn't include the forwarding address. I don't know. But the way the letter reads is like, just stop. And my adoptive parents, being like very clear rule followers, were like, we are picking up what you're putting down. We will just stop. Then when I turned 18, I met my bio mom through the same connection. My aunt at the FDA recently retired, but still had friends. And so I met her when I turned 18. And that was great. I really enjoyed that. Really fantastic moment. And it felt like a real connection because of that bioreflection I saw. And then, I was still living in New Jersey. I was graduating high school, and then I went to undergrad in Boston. And then after Boston, I moved down to DC, which was near where my bio mom lives, but not that close. And we'd see each other like every 6 months, maybe once or twice a year, actually. And I was realizing that I was getting serious with my girlfriend, now wife. I invited her to dinner, and she came to dinner. She came like from work. And then when I got into Yale, I was like, hey, I got into Yale. I'm moving out of the area. I'd love to meet my half sisters, because when I first met my bio mom, she told me about my bio sisters. And then she started sending me cards with their names signed on them, all in her script. And so I was like, hey, I'd like to meet him. And she was like, no, that's never, she was like, not now is the word she said, not now. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I respected that for a really long time. At Yale, I invited her my wedding. She didn't show. I invited her to my thesis presentation at the end of my degree at Yale. I had to do a concert. And so it was like this whole project, and it was like a real capstone on my work there. And it was a really intense program. And I invited her to that. She didn't respond to that. When my son was born, I just kind of lived that experience, and I moved to New York and after grad school and lived there. And I would email and ask and be interested, but it wasn't really like reciprocal. And then when my son was born, I was like, hey, my son is born. Do you want to meet your grandchild? And because I was pretty tired of the long distance, arm's length kind of stuff. So I kind of threw in that we are blood related. I wouldn't call her bio mom or anything. I'd always call her by her first name. And she was like, oh, it's just a really busy time. It's just really hard right now. She was like, your half sister just got diagnosed with diabetes and some kind of disease that I didn't read. I've kind of blocked out some of the details on that, because it felt like a third rejection in some ways. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine, understand. So I didn't push the issue. A year later, I was like, hey, do you want to meet Jonas? Do you want to meet your son, your grandson? No, still nothing. And this is all because I didn't know the context of my birth. I didn't have that story until literally March of last year. And it was just always at arm's length. And then she just stopped responding. I don't remember exactly. I think she just said, oh, it's still not the right time. So I was like, okay, never mind. And I waited. And then I finally, I had a 23andMe test that I've been doing forever. That I had forever. My wife got it for me for Christmas 4 years ago. And I didn't do it. And it eventually went bad, and I had to get a new one. And I got a new one. I did it. I sent it in, and no, there was no connections there at all. None. And I have a theory about that, but we can get into that later. And there was no connections at all. So I was like, okay, well, that didn't pan out. What are the other ones around here? And they're like, Ancestry. I was like, okay, yeah. But it was right around the time when my bio aunt was doing the family tree for her family. And so I was like, oh, and I connected, because it was she had everything I'd need, because I knew my bio mom's full name. I knew it was really easy to find the rest of it, because the Google search, and I knew where she lived. And so it's because like I said, I had met her a few times when I was living in the area, and she gave me some context then of the family and all that, but it wasn't anything deep. And it was more here is your context of the bio family, not in the same kind of way that as adoptees we look for that. You know what I mean? It was more this is your heritage or your history or your ancestry. And then my aunt was doing that, my bio aunt was doing that kind of stuff. And I was like, hey, and she was like, oh, I'm so glad you reached out to me. It was really great. I was there the day you were born. I was like, holy shit, that's amazing. I don't know if you can say shit on your podcast. I'm sorry.
We can say shit. We do. Yeah.
Okay,
we're good.
And this was January or December. It was December 2020, because I finally sent in the thing during lockdown. I was like, well, I'm not doing anything because I work in theater. And so nothing was like, everything was still really shut down because, we didn't have vaccines yet. We didn't have any of the kind of like, it was like, it's hard to remember what that mentality was like now that like we've gone through something else, but like I was still sitting at home and there was no work and no like thing about it because I freelance. And the virus we have is like basically designed for people not to congregate and talk loudly at other people, so we couldn't, the theater was like not even a twinkle in the eye. So I was like, well, I might as well try to use this time to like really dig into my reunion. And she was like, it's so great that you contacted me. I was like, fantastic. This is great. I like made a personal connection with my bio family. And then it was like nothing, just silence. And I was like, look, you don't have to contact me. You don't have to talk to me. Just don't ghost me. You can just say, I don't want to talk to you and I'll leave you alone. No problem. Just tell me about my bio dad. You have to know. You were there when I was born. You were like in that, and she like nothing at all. And so, and then after I sent that, I got an email from my bio mom and she was like, look, you can't ask these questions. You can't do this. I told you that if you needed to know about your family, you can talk to me. And I was like, well, I did these things. And no, I skipped the part because I was talking to my bio aunt and that was fine. I was like, okay, well, I made a connection. Let me connect to my half sisters. I asked my bio mom in 2008 if I can meet them. She said, no, not now. I was like, okay. And I waited until 2020. I met my bio mom in 2002. So, and I waited all that time. She signed cards with them. It was weird memory. So I reached out to my half sister, my older half sister. I have two half sisters. And I reached out to one over Facebook Messenger. And I said, hey, I exist. I wanted to let you know that. Because I've been talking, been processing my adoption through adoptee groups on Twitter and Zoom. And I think like actually a lot of people have been doing that because I finally talked to people who are like, when I hang out with people and they say, hey, let's get coffee, I'm like super excited about this coffee because I'm like really excited to hang out with someone and like feel welcomed. And like other adoptees are like, yeah, me too. And like, those kinds of things. And it's like, oh, I thought that was just me. I thought it was like just who I am. And then so, finding connection, it's so weird as adoptees, right? Where we're like, we think we're the only one like us because no one has ever thought that we would ever be able to get together. And then we describe like our experiences and it's like, yeah, I have that. Yeah, me too. And it really becomes clear that us as adoptees are this like classified group and we have similar experiences in the same, even though like, there's transracial adoptees and we all share certain aspects of it because we're adoptees. And that really was encouraging to me. And so I was like, okay, well, it can't be worse than not contact. So I reached out to my half sister. My half sister immediately called my bio mom. And then my bio mom sent that email I referred to earlier, where she was like, if you want to talk to people, you got to go through me. I told you you can't contact them, you can't meet them. And I was like, look, you're not the gatekeeper of my family. You can't be. I deserve to know the context of this. I never heard back from her. I sent that, like, that spoiled it. She's never responded to it. It was because I stood up for myself. And like, I still didn't know the context of my birth. I still didn't know any of that. And then in the end, I was like, look, I asked about, and it's hard to get into without getting into really the nitty gritty, but she also said like, why would you ask about your bio father or something to that effect? And I was like, look, I asked your sister about my bio father because as an adoptee, I have to run the risk that I am a product of trauma. And so I didn't want to ask you directly because I didn't want to stir up that trauma for you. And I was trying to respect that trauma because it was very clear in her previous email that she's like talking about her trauma and the stuff that I was digging up because I was just trying to talk to people. And I was like, I understand it's clear you have some trauma. I don't know what it is. You never told me, but I also deserve contact. And so she never saw past her trauma to see me as more than a reminder of her trauma, it seems like. And so my aunt stopped talking to me, but I live my life openly online because of this exact reason. My bio cousin looked me up, Googled me, found me on Twitter and Instagram, and saw that we share a lot of the same points of view and politics and all that kind of great stuff. And they sent me this great email, which was the warmest of hellos. And I thought that was like the greatest thing to get at that time. It just felt like such a great, big, warm digital hug. Because right at that same time, I was having this discussion with my half sister. And they were like, look, I need some time to process. I said, great, totally understand. I told them the same thing. You don't have to talk to me. I don't expect you to talk to me. I don't demand you to talk to me, but just tell me that you don't want to talk to me. Don't just ghost me. Fine. So we talk, and then they were like, so why didn't you give our mom the heads up you were going to contact me? I was like, well, I waited all this time. I figured our mom had that time. I didn't think of it because, and like we had a long discussion over a course of a week. And at the end, my half sister was like, I think you should apologize for how you told me. She was like, you should have told our mom first. And I was like, well, our mom wasn't going to tell you. She knew when we, like, years and years ago, that I was interested in meeting you. My half sister was like, even still, you should have told them and then waited. And then if they didn't say anything, go ahead and reach out to me. I was like, well, look, you want to start this relationship with an apology. I don't think that's fair or equal. We probably shouldn't talk right now. Then she responded and was like, and then blocked me. I was like, okay, that's fine. But at the same exact time she blocked me, my cousin a day later was like, warmest of hellos. We've been interacting ever since. So almost a whole year. I couldn't have asked for anything more. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for sharing all that. My heart was just beating when you were telling me about the additional rejection. I just felt that with you. And I do think that it's wonderful that you do have a connection that feels safe, because, like, how is all this sitting in your body right now? Because this is new. This is like fresh wounding. Can you share with us, like, are you mad? Are you, what's going on?
Well, when my bio mom sent that letter trying to reestablish herself as the gatekeeper to my bio family, I was very mad. And I think that reflected in my reply to her. I didn't try to like dismiss her trauma. I wasn't rude, but I was clearly heated and like in the terms of like defending myself and trying to center myself in my adoption story and trying to stand strong instead of just deferring to her gatekeeping tactics. And I was very mad then. And when my bio cousin, when they told me about the context of my birth, I was greatly appreciative of that. But it was also like, I felt like I didn't know myself in a big way. It really shifted my world. And I did feel some regret on the way I wrote to my bio mom originally. But like I reread it, and that was like, I instantly felt like guilty about like I didn't, because in the back of my mind when I was writing that email, I thought that was a possibility, but I didn't think it was a high possibility. So I could have done more, but I feel like I did like enough, or like the bare minimum to not be rude. And I feel guilty that I could have done more and I didn't. But I have to live with the context that I had it in at the time I wrote it, as opposed to the context I had a week later. And once I came to that, and like at the end of the day, I still know who I am as a person. I still am a sound designer, a composer. I've worked my ass off to get to where I am. And I know that like I have a loving family. That is really who I am. And the context of my birth doesn't define me, but but like having that allows me to walk through the world and navigating reunion a lot better. And it felt like I had a piece of me that I like made me understand that whole relationship with my bio mom that I didn't have before. And like suddenly it all made sense, all these little details. Because I remember every time I talked to my bio mom, I like remember the conversation vividly. And one time I was talking to them on the phone when I was like 18 or 19. And they were saying, oh, I'm doing a Take Back the Night Walk. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. What is that? I'd never heard of it. Now that I know the context of my birth and that I'm a product of trauma, it's like, of course, that's like, you know, my bio mom is trying to put some positive on her trauma and like trying to like fit back together to me in a big way. And then it explained all the times that I was at arm's length, and especially like, I guess as I got older, you know, like I have never met my bio father. I don't know anything about my bio father. I know that my bio family does, but they won't tell me. But like maybe I look like him, and maybe that's, you know, I mean, it can be entirely triggering for my bio mom, and maybe that's what. But like it suddenly put all this stuff together where I was just angry that I was trying to invite her into my life, and she just wouldn't give me any reasons why she wouldn't come. And if she could. And like, obviously it's impossible to share that kind of trauma. So I can't blame her for that. But I wish there was a way that I could have known earlier and that kind of stuff. So that's how I'm feeling. But now like, it feels like I have, at this exact moment, it feels like I have a lot more context, and that feels good. And
yeah, man, I appreciate you opening up your soul and speaking so truthfully, because I am sure this is the truth for many other people as well that are adopted, that something bad had to happen in order for you to be adopted is really probably the case. And, you know, I just am really sorry. I think you are, you know, to shift toward like who you are and who you've become in spite of this. Like your work is simply beautiful, Matt. And
thank you.
I'd like to, you know, maybe we talk about that, because, you know, as an adopted person, it's really hard sometimes to find words or to find people that understand. You know, before I was connected with the adoption community, I might be able to feel something through a sound or a song. And I just wonder how you came to be who you are in terms of the sound and what it means to you, and where does all of that come from?
It comes from the idea that I could have been aborted, that like, you know, it just random chance of twist of fate I wasn't. And the fact that like I was given a life. So I wanted to make the best of the chance I was given. This was something that I didn't come up with until about high school, where I had a friend who was Catholic and was like, oh, you're adopted. You must be pro-life. And I was like, whoa, why would I didn't put those two things together, but that really made me think about it. It's like, yeah, why am I not? That'd be like, cause like, I believe in women body autonomy. I believe that, you know, they completely have this choice, and that it would have been a completely valid choice. And now I know the context of my birth, that's even more valid choice, if not like the most valid choice. So I decided to like take the thing I was given and use it and try to be the best at this work. And like, I wasn't always a musician. It didn't come naturally. What was interesting to me about theater was the shared experience of being in the room with this story. So like, and having that moment of catharsis with the person next to you, the actor on stage, and the like team that designed that moment. Like I love that. And I didn't really come to a realization of that until when I was in college and really dived into a lot of the like some of the great plays of the last 20th century and all that, and really like saw that. But I didn't get to college until I like wanted to really excel at sound design, and that was just because in high school I like was interested in it and I was pretty good at it, so I decided to apply for college about it, and that's set me on this great journey where I've met all these really cool people. And then like after college, I met some great designers, and they were all composers, and they were all like writing music. It was people like Lindsay Jones and Marty Desjardins and Ryan Rummery, and like these are all sound designers who are doing great work, and they were all really creative people. And I was like, well, where did you learn that? And a lot of them were like, well, I learned it while working. And I was like, well, I gotta shortcut this. And I met my advisor who just retired this year, David Budries, while I was in undergrad, and he was the sound design professor at Yale School of Drama. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to continue doing theater, I better go to the best school for theater and like try to figure out, like, because again, I got this gift. If I go to like a different school, or like a school that's like pretty good but not the best, then when I might have squandered that. So I applied, I got in, and then that changed my life. At the Yale School of Drama, I was there when Lupita Nyong'o was there, and a whole bunch of other fantastic actors, designers, and composers. I can list them all. It only means so much out of context or in context. And I don't want to be a name dropper beyond what I've already become. And you know, the amount of talent that is in the room when you go there and is just amazing and infectious. And it's like the best people doing the work that they were brought there to do all at once. And it's this amazing feeling and like such creativity that you want to live, breathe, and sleep it and eat it and just be there all the time. It's also incredibly exhausting place to work and learn, but it was like, I haven't felt, I've been in rooms with incredibly talented people, and it's always an amazing experiences. But it's never been the same kind of thing where we all feel like we're in the same level and we're like just totally feeding off the creativity and the rawness of our thing. You know, like after like grad school, you go there to be shaped into the artist that you become, that they saw in you when they accepted you. But like the rawness and that kind of stuff is so great. And also like the ability to make mistakes and like know that you're there to try wild things that seem really cool. And then you're like, and make those mistakes, where in the professional world, you really don't get that option. And so that all together is this great alchemy of feeling. And then from there, I've been writing music and traveling the country and sending some of my music internationally. And that's been a great feeling. And I've loved it.
It sounds incredible. I felt like I was there when you were describing it. You know, we've had a few of those moments as a creative team where you're just firing on all pistons, and there's nothing else like that experience.
I know, it's amazing.
I was just going to comment, Matt, that I know that being on stage crews and in bands, it really always ends up being this sort of like family.
Oh yeah,
there's this big connection there, and I know that's always drawn me to it. And I'm just, I think it's interesting to, to maybe having the lack of that, and finding it there. That's a beautiful thing about music. The connectivity that comes with it. So
that's incredibly insightful, because that is one of the reasons why I love theater so much, because it does feel like a family. It feels like we're creating something together, and it's full of love, and that is very much a family. And I definitely went into theater because I had that sense of displacement. I mean, like don't get me wrong, my adoptive parents were incredibly loving. I know that like adoptive parents fill the full range of the human experience. My adoptive parents were very loving and very supportive. I mean, to the very point where I was like, I want to go to art school. And my adoptive parents are not artists. They're not musicians. They're not those people at all. They're, my dad was a school administrator. My mom was a gym teacher. And, there is a lot of love when you have to teach people. But like, they're not musicians. They're not like, and my mom's side of the family are all engineers. Literally all the men are engineers. And my dad's side, they're salesmen. So it's just not in that family experience. And I told them I want to go to art school. I want to go to expensive art school. And they didn't even blink. They were just like, sure, go. Yeah. And then I did that, and I did pretty well, but I didn't do, I did okay. And then I said, I want to go to another art school. And they were like, okay. you know. So they've been very supportive of my whole experience, and it's been fantastic. So I want to make that very clear. But I still felt that displacement, and I did try to find it in places like you said, Sean, like in theater and bands and that kind of stuff.
Well, I always feel those arts, when you see like a real actor, a real musician, someone really into that, I always call it a pre-wiring. So it feels like a genetic trait. And when you're with other musicians, other artists, you feel that there is a gene that you're sharing with them, So I just think that's an interesting, it sounds like a happy place, for anyone to go, but we can't all go there. And so, you had your own genetic family in a way,
Yeah. I mean, what was funny is that one of the times I had lunch with my bio mom in Maryland, she introduced me to three of her brothers. And this is a little bit of a side. I sat down and I remember looking across at me, and they looked at me like I was like I arose from the dead. Because it literally they had this look in their eyes like, oh my God, that is you. Like they had this whole context of like, I never thought this would ever, I never thought we would share a meal together. You know what I mean? And like later on, it feels like the family, because they never reached out, you know what I mean? They never were like, oh, it's so great to, we had the ability to, it wasn't like the dark ages. This was like 2010, no, I'm sorry, 2007 or 9 or whatever. But they like looked at me like as if I risen from the dead, as if this was like a bygone person that they like never would consider this. But one of them is a musician, another one is an IT person, and another one was a kind of writer on the side. And so like, and that's what sound design is in a lot of ways, especially for theater, where it's a mix of this real artful, ephemeral kind of work where it's sound, you can't see it, you can't touch it, but it apply, we always are experiencing it. And also this real technical aspect of it, where we have to figure out the system and how it wires together, and like why we want speakers in certain places and what do the acoustics do to that sound and all that. So it's both very artistic and very technical. And that meeting my bio uncles really felt like, now I know why I have this. And my bio mom is also an IT person, which there's a lot of data that we have to deal with too. And that always really interests me for a very long time, is like how computers can talk to each other and connect and all that. That was actually part of one of my, kind of in a roundabout way, part of my thesis, where I took a player piano. Modern player pianos have the ability to read MIDI. So, and they have motors on all the keys, and they're like really controlled motors. It's a particular piano called a disclavier or whatever. And so you can give it MIDI. So I did a piano duet between tape or playback and this live piano performance, which was me writing this song and then feeding to it live, and that kind of plays between the two and gives it this weird kind of quality, which is taking the like technical of sending it MIDI, how to send it MIDI, how to sync it up with this playback while creating art from all that technology.
Matt, I'm going to put you on the spot, and we can edit this out if you don't want to do it. But I'm wondering if you could like imagine just a blank theater space.
Sure.
And if you were going to have a scene like from your adoption, it could be anything, maybe something you want in the future. Like what colors do you see, and maybe what would it sound like?
Sure.
I know you can't. I would just love to hear like the mental imagery, because what I see when I think about like your birth mom, I won't tell you, but I want to see if it matches. So
okay.
Anyway.
I'm gonna make it really theatrical, because that's how I think. So,
yeah, do it. Yes, all the stuff.
So all right, it's not a black box theater, but it's like a stage, an empty bare stage with a wooden floor that's slightly reflective, and it's myself in standing facing the audience, and my bio mom standing facing the audience, and two downlights, white downlights, on there. Mine is warm and hers is cool, like almost like LED white and bright and very, very like bright to the point of like she's glowing in like a kind of bothers your eyes in a way. And then the sound is live. It would be live. It would be recorded. We would take the input of what's about to happen. So what would happen is that we would walk towards each other, and what the sound would be the echoes of the footsteps, reverbed, like really, really big reverb and like empty space. And we cross paths for half a second, and then we keep walking by each other.
That was just really beautiful. Thank you for doing that.
Of course.
So Matt, as we begin to close in on our time together, is there anything else that you want to say or express to the people that are listening, that are hurting, that are trying to find their answers, that are grappling? Because it seems to me, in spite of everything, you've created these beautiful spaces where your soul can be free and you can expand into all that you really are. And I want that for people so desperately, to be able to have. I know it's a huge contrast in your life to have this heavy thing, but you also have this beauty in your creativity. I don't even know if that was a question, but
no,
I'll let you.
I don't, it's so hard because I feel like every adoptee's story is different, and like what we want out of our stories and what we're looking for are so different. I was reading on Twitter today, an adoptee was like, why do we search? Why are we the ones who have to search? And so, and like, I know why I felt I had to search, but also it resulted in a lot of pain for me. Like I said earlier, it was like 3 rejections. So I don't but like, I can say, find your context in your life, but like, that's so easy for me to say, because I can't, like, I lucked out in the adoption lottery. Like my adoptive parents were loving and caring and supportive.
Matt, I think that's sound advice and honest advice. And Sean, is there anything else you want to say before we let Matt get back to his busy life?
No, I just, I could just, I have to go back and say your description, your stage setting there. I think most people are going to be able to picture that even through a podcast. I could see that, when you said the bright white LED, I like squinted, and then, even when you described it, it was just very visceral. And that's a beautiful thing. I think you should, sounds like you could maybe make a play out of this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've thought about it. But yeah, I mean, I didn't think of that moment until Heidi asked me. But that's all my training right there coming out for you. That's the MFA and the BFA
Improv.
all coming through.
Well, yeah, you never know what's going to happen on this. So thank you guys so much for being here. And Matt, I deeply appreciate you sharing, and I know it wasn't easy to do that. So you're a gift and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I really appreciate it.